Chapter 2, The Prodrome and Environmental Triggers, 2023. Walking into a game that started without me. By the time 2024 opens, the episode is already primed. This chapter stays with 2023, the year that still looks on paper like a man getting his life together, while the conditions for mania quietly assemble underneath. From the outside, I am doing the right things. I have survived a medical crisis. I have stopped drinking. I am taking on responsibility in my family's trust. Emily is pregnant, and we are preparing for another child. I have sought out a psychiatrist and a medical clinic to help me sleep and manage anxiety instead of pouring wine at night. From October 2022 until May 2023, I am completely sober, but untreated. No alcohol, no cannabis script, no mood stabilizers, just white-knuckling my way through work, family, and the Happy Lion file. From the inside, two fuses are burning side by side. The Happy Lion work, which pulls me deep into an old, contaminated family structure and gives me a moral cause, and medicinal cannabis, which becomes the new chemical lever I use to cope with that pressure. Neither of these alone explains what will happen later. Together, they turn 2023 into a powder keg. Happy Lion did not begin with me. By the time I enter the story, it is already a loaded object. The guardianship material from 2015 shows how my grandmother Miriam, after my grandfather died, had key assets transferred into her name. Later, my uncle Charles set up a company, Happy Lion Pty Ltd., and moved her Redfern and Villiard Street, Maryland's, properties into that structure while he held power of attorney. The transcript questions how he managed those affairs and whether he was fit to be handling her money at all. Alongside those trust assets in Redfern and Villiard Street sits another property that matters enormously to me, 15 Auto Street. That house is not part of the Happy Lion Trust. It is jointly owned by my father and me. It lives in the same emotional universe, though. When I think about family property, I don't separate Otto from Redfern in my gut. They all feel like pieces of the same contested story about who gets protected and who gets used. That is the board I walk onto in 2023. I am not inventing a conflict. I am stepping into one that has been mishandled for years. Part of me experiences this as a call to duty. Another part of me senses, even before I name it, that I am entering a rigged game. Happy Lion comes alive. In early 2023, the Happy Lion file stops being history and becomes my work. One of the key sparks is a letter from our lawyer, Wasim, to the accountant, Ald Return. The letter states in careful legal language that a Form 484 was lodged with ASEC, removing my Uncle Maroon as director and shareholder of Happy Lion without his knowledge or authority, and demands that the change be reversed. On one level, it is just a technical problem, the wrong form, the wrong signature. On another level, it confirms my worst suspicions, that key decisions about our family assets have been made behind closed doors, and that the professionals who should be neutral have been pulling levers on the wrong side. Shortly after, Charles signs a letter resigning as director and secretary of Happy Lion, dated 6 February 2023. Our advisor Fred emails to tell me that Charles has come into the office and signed all the paperwork, and that he has added a point to the minute to record how this has happened. On its face, this is a win. The man who mismanaged Marion's affairs has stepped down. But even as I register it as a victory, there is something off about the way it happens. The resignation arrives not as a clear admission of wrongdoing, but as part of a negotiated paperwork package. It feels less like justice and more like damage control. By mid-June, the beneficiaries of the Happy Lion Unit Trust pass a resolution removing Charles as a beneficiary. The document reads like a charge sheet: secret loans, refusal to provide accountings, unilateral decisions, and a pattern of acting without proper authority. If you line those documents up on a table, they tell a simple story. A problematic fiduciary is being removed. In my body, they confirm a different story, that my sense of being gaslit about money and fairness for years has not been paranoia. The documents themselves say, "You were right to be suspicious." That recognition is intoxicating. It is also dangerous. As 2023 unfolds, my involvement with Happy Lion moves from reactive to central. On 20 February, there is a family meeting. The minutes record discussions about loans from Happy Lion to other entities, refinance options, the Penrith contract, and the possibility of litigation against Charles, including freezing and tracing orders over his accounts. Reading those notes now, you can see all the themes that will later flood my manic thinking: control, breach of trust, the need to trace where the money really went. Around the same time, my phone is filling with PDFs and Excel sheets. In one WhatsApp thread, I'm sending Majid and others ANZ loan statements, RAM statements, transaction lists from 2015, valuations for the Redfern property, feasibility numbers for Penrith. The BZK chat shows me organizing Zoom meetings with uncles and cousins, promising to have all the documents on screen so we can go through them line by line. On 20 March, the minutes of another meeting formally appoint me as CAO/CEO of Happy Lion. It is a ceremonial title in one sense. This is still a small family structure, not a listed company, but internally it lands with force. It turns the vague feeling that someone should sort this out into an explicit mandate. I am the one who is supposed to clean the mess. I respond the way I know how, by working. Over the next few weeks, I draft a Happy Lion business plan and print copies at Easter to everyone except Charles. The plan lays out a summary of the current debt and equity position, proposed settlements with Charles based on conservative net asset values, and a pathway for refinancing and redevelopment that protects Marion and maximizes family benefit. The affidavit records some of these numbers: the combined value of Redfern and Villers Street, the rough equity position, the overly generous offer we were prepared to make to Charles to keep things out of court. On its own, this would be a story about a stressed but competent man doing a difficult job. Put alongside what is happening in my body and brain, it becomes the spine of a prodrome. From the outside, it looks like diligence and leadership. From the inside, it is a mask over mounting agitation and shrinking sleep. What Happy Lion does to my head. The paperwork itself is dry. The way I experience it is not. In my draft email to Wasim, you can hear the shift in tone. I am not just enumerating breaches, I am narrating a morality play. I describe Charles's conduct as unconscionable, as a betrayal of Marion, as something that must be rectified to honor what was meant to happen with these assets. Reading that email now, I can hear the forensic voice and the manic voice talking over the top of each other in the same paragraph. I take the role of the person who sees the pattern when others have either missed it or chosen not to act. Every document that confirms a suspicion feels like a verdict. You were right about him. You were right about how they operate. You were right to be angry. At the same time, I am pouring hours, often late at night, into reconciling statements, creating timelines, drafting strategies. The BZK and family chats show me working across time zones and schedules, answering messages at odd hours, telling people I'll stay up to finish a spreadsheet or prepare for a meeting. This combination, moral certainty and cognitive overdrive, is exactly the kind of mental terrain in which mania grows. Happy Lion becomes more than a job. It becomes a lens through which I reinterpret my father's side of the family as a whole. As the months go on, I start to notice who supported Charles and who challenged him, who is willing to acknowledge the NCAT findings and who downplays them, who stands with me when I present the business plan, and who rolls their eyes. By mid-2023, my identity is braided into this work. I am no longer simply Andrew, builder and father. I am the de facto CFO and prosecutor of a complicated, ethically compromised legacy structure. That sense of role, of being the one who must finally stop the pattern, will later fuse tightly with my manic grandiosity. Against this background, the rest of my life is still moving. The long WhatsApp history with Emily, stretching back to 2015, is one of the clearest anchors I have. In those early years, our chats are full of ordinary things: photos of meals, plans for evenings, little jokes, I love you and have a good sleep messages at the end of long days. That is what my baseline looks like: a steady, affectionate partnership with shared routines and worries. By 2023, Emily is pregnant again. She does not vanish from my life as the Happy Lion work intensifies. If anything, she becomes more central. She is the person I tell when I'm overwhelmed, the one I test reality against when I start to feel persecuted or misunderstood. Even when I am irritable or withdrawn, there is an implicit question in the way I talk to her. Does this make sense? Am I being reasonable? Her presence is one of the reasons the year still looks normal to outsiders. We are having another baby. We are still going through the motions of family life. Whatever storms are gathering in my head, I am still changing nappies, going to scans, organizing dinners. The BZK development chat, the family business WhatsApp thread about the development work, tells the same story from another angle. There is no obvious collapse in the way I write there. I am sharp, practical, responsive. Cannabis, the new regulator. While I am doing all of this, another storyline is unfolding quietly but powerfully in parallel.
In early 2023, I begin the process of accessing medicinal cannabis through a telehealth clinic. The emails show a surprisingly painstaking process. In May, the clinic tells me they will need a letter from my psychiatrist describing my history and supporting the use of cannabis for my anxiety and sleep. I reply that my psychiatrist has indeed recommended a high CBD, low THC formulation as something that might help. Over weeks, we trade messages, the clinic chasing the letter, me following up, my psychiatrist forwarding the report. It feels at the time like responsible self-advocacy. I have stopped drinking. I am anxious and sleeping badly. I am doing the right thing by talking honestly to a psychiatrist and asking for help. By May 2023, I have already started smoking cannabis again, first getting it from my cousin Majid and then from my cousin Yusuf. And those early nights where it seems to quiet my head are what I point to when I tell the clinic it helps me sleep and calm down. In July, the clinic issues a script, but makes a formulation error, prescribing a 25% hybrid strain. I notice immediately and write back to correct it, reminding them that with my ADHD, I was advised to avoid stimulating sativa-dominant mixes and to use indica as CBD instead. They apologize, reissue the script, and throw in free postage and a discount on CBD oil. Later, an invoice shows that the prescription amounts to a significant quantity of high THC flower, 2 15-gram containers of 22% THC, with a repeat up to 45 grams in total. From the outside, this still reads as a controlled, medically supervised trial. From the inside, it becomes something else. The new lever I can pull when the happy lion work, the family conflict, and the pre-existing anxiety all become too much. I start to reach for it whenever my thoughts are too sharp or my chest is too tight. When effects or withdrawal hits later in the year, I describe cannabis in a message as the most effective medicine for the symptoms, and note that I am having my first dose for the day. The problem is not that cannabis appears out of nowhere. The problem is that it slots perfectly into a system that is already under strain. It seems to work until it doesn't. Later psychiatrists would tell me that this combination, predisposition, stress, and high THC cannabis, was perfect kindling for the mania that followed. By mid-2023, the formal script is not the whole story. In a July WhatsApp exchange with my cousin Majid, I am looking for cannabis I believe has been left for me. I tell him there was meant to be half an ounce at the office and that it isn't there. He replies that they are almost out, and that Tony might have some because he left my uncle a fair bit. I am momentarily taken aback with Uncle Tony, but I let it go. I start to think in ounce quantities, not just prescribed doses. I expect usable stock to be waiting where I imagine it will be, and when it isn't, I am directed toward a man we all know as psychotically vulnerable as someone who might have some. The NSAT and AVO materials make it plain that Tony has schizophrenia, has had multiple psychiatric admissions, and has been at the center of violent drug-fueled incidents. The fact that any of us, me included, are comfortable with the sentence, "I left him a fair bit of high-potency cannabis," is in hindsight damning. The insight comes later, particularly after the 2023 admission when I took Tony to the psych ward. He was wailing in anger and distress the entire time, and it was deeply traumatizing for me. Sitting there with him, watching his psychosis tear through him, flooded me with memories of my brother's breakdown. That experience doesn't belong to 2024. It's part of the same 2023 landscape I'm describing here, even if I only fully understood its weight afterwards. From idealization to disgust. For most of my life, I had idealized my father's side of the family. However much hurt and chaos there was, I still held on to an image of them as strong and important, people whose approval mattered. Happy Lion, at first, seemed like a chance to redeem that, to bring order and fairness where there had been exploitation. For years, I had told myself these were the men who had escaped the chaos, the proof our family could produce strong, competent protectors. 2023 begins to crack that idealization.
The more I work on the file, the less I can pretend it is a one-off mistake. The NCAT findings, the unauthorized ASIC forms, the resistance to transparently accounting for loans, the determination to keep control even after being found unfit, all of it points to a pattern, not an accident. At the same time, the smaller, more intimate details start to hit harder. In that July exchange, the casual way cannabis is left with Tony lands, in retrospect, as symbolic. A vulnerable man at the center of our family dramas, being drugged and bounced between houses, police, hospitals, and construction sites. Somewhere in 2023, the emotional polarity flips. I do not yet explode, but I begin to feel deeply disgusted. The family I once wanted to be part of now makes me feel contaminated. The work on Happy Lion stops feeling like an opportunity and starts feeling like a moral obligation. If I don't expose this, I am complicit. That is the emotional climate I carry into the end of the year. By the end of the year, I am carrying 3 things: a body that has been through major surgery and is now regulated by high-potency cannabis, a mind that has spent months immersed in forensic reconstruction of family misconduct, and a heart that has shifted from longing for acceptance to recoiling in disgust. From the outside, the pieces still look respectable: a diligent man, a complex trust, a legitimate prescription. From the inside, the 2 fuses have almost burned to the same point. When I board the plane for Europe at the start of 2024, I am not leaving these things behind. Happy Lion is in my laptop and my head. THC is in my bloodstream, my sleep, and my sense of what calms me. I feel righteous, exhausted, and increasingly convinced that only I see the full picture. Chapter 3 will follow what happens when that configuration collides with jet lag, religious symbolism, and the seductive feeling that the whole continent is sending me messages. Villiers Street, the night at 17 Villiers.
At the very start of 2024, everything I have been carrying from 2023 comes to a head in my grandfather's old house at 17 Villiers Street. I go there expecting to talk through the business and the trust, the jobs that have gone bad, Marion's affairs, the questions I have been raising. What I walk into does not feel like a calm conversation. It feels like a lineup: raised voices, criticism about my behavior and tone, and a sense that I am the problem to be fixed. Whatever truth there may have been in some of those complaints lands in my nervous system as rejection rather than concern. At some point, I cross a line. In the corner of the room, there is a statue of Mary, one of those standard devotional pieces that has sat in the house for years. I pick it up and smash it on the floor. In an audio I record later, I describe it as the moment I stop pretending that the religious story in that house has anything to do with protection or mercy. What I know now is simpler. I was out of control, acting out years of anger in a single destructive gesture. My father moves towards me in that familiar way, part reprimand, part attempt to physically shut me down, and I lunge back at him. I wrap my arms around his neck and choke him. It is not a metaphor. It is an assault. In later recordings, I would call it basically assaulting my father, and that is what it was. In the moment, I am not thinking in sentences. I am flooded and acting on impulse. When I replay it now, I am mostly stunned that I was capable of doing that to him at all. When I get home afterwards, the adrenaline drains out of me. My legs give way, and I end up on the floor, sobbing. For months, I cry on and off about that night. For a long time, I tell myself that Villiers Street is what made me mentally ill, that everything begins there. With some distance and with a diagnosis, I can see that night for what it is. Not the start of the illness, but the first time the prodrome becomes undeniable to anyone watching. It is the point where all the threads from 2023, Happy Lion, the cannabis, the sleep, the disgust, finally tear through the surface. A few weeks later, I will get on a plane for Europe carrying all of that with me. Chapter 3 follows what happens when that configuration of body, brain, and story hits a continent I have decided is sending me messages.